café exposition et une dernière session, pardonnez-moi, à 11 heures, l'utilisation productive des énergies renouvelables dans l'agriculture, un facteur clé pour la viabilité financière des solutions R&D. Après ça, on va continuer avec les remarques de clôture pour finir cette deuxième édition des journées d'accès à l'énergie renouvelable au Burundi. Et on serait tous libres d'aller à la pause déjeuner qui commencera environ 1 heure. Avec ça, je veux d'abord inviter David à venir pour la modération. Et je veux aussi demander à Aram Tal de la Banque mondiale si elle nous écoute, si elle est déjà en ligne. Et tout d'abord, je veux aussi inviter déjà le panéliste pour ces premières sessions de venir ici, de monter sur le podium pour commencer la session. Donc, Patrick Tenuy, Head of Policy and Regional Strategy at Google, le représentant le ministère de l'Environnement, Arnold Jack de Mude, chef de l'unité infrastructure de l'aération de l'Union européenne au Burundi, et aussi M. David Berito, consultant for Clean Cooking de la Banque mondiale, s'il vous plaît.
Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à la troisième journée sur les journées dédiées à l'accès renouvelable au Burundi. Et c'est la sixième session en rapport avec le financement climat-énergie au Burundi, comment on pourra éventuellement combler le fossé. Et cette session est dédiée à la mobilisation des financements climat-carbone pour l'accès à l'énergie. On essaie justement de bâtir des synergies entre l'énergie et le climat dans le cadre justement de l'atténuation et l'adaptation climat. Au fait, pourquoi on est venu avec cette idée? On a remarqué qu'au Burundi, comme la plupart des pays africains, manque de cadre et de connaissances pour attirer avec succès cette nouvelle source de financement. Je dis les financements verts. Mais un atout que le Burundi a, c'est son faible niveau d'émissions. Et il y a alors ce potentiel justement pour une série d'activités d'atténuation du carbone, au-delà des activités qui sont déjà dans la CDN, et qui pourrait lui permettre d'accéder au financement des fonds verts par le biais de l'échange pour soutenir son objectif ambitieux de devenir un pays développé, neutre en carbone et résilient au changement climatique d'ici 2050. Alors, avec la participation de certains investisseurs privés, cette session, avec des présentations et des questions-réponses, présentera les différentes opportunités, les instruments de soutien, les initiatives de financement liées aux solutions d'énergie renouvelable durable au Burundi. Et du coup, je vais inviter le premier présentateur, je pense que c'est le représentant de CAGE, et qui va présenter sur son point de vue, le point de vue de CAGE sur la réduction du déficit de financement climat-énergie au Burundi. Dominique?
Hello and good morning. I think some of you may have been expecting to see Delphine Kaze here. Delphine unfortunately has had to attend an urgent matter. So I am speaking in his place. My name is Dominic Parker. I have been working with Kaje now for 16 months, I think it is. And I'm delighted to be able to talk to you through this presentation. I am aware that we only have 15 minutes, so I will keep to that as quickly as I can. I'm not going to be certain that I know all of the things that Delphine was going to say, but I have a good idea of what he would be saying. I'm hoping that this clicker will work. Let's see. I understand these screens move faster. Here we go. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Kaje is a local clean energy company. It's been here since about 2018 and makes a wide variety of different products, as you'll see here. Those products are all based around charcoal, and charcoal made from agricultural bio-waste. We've also moved on to do a number of different things, not just charcoal, but biomass logs. We've moved into cook stoves, we've moved into biogas, and various other matters. In fact, there are 6 products that you can see there on the screen. All of these products, I'm pleased to say, have had a profound effect in being able to help promote clean energy here. And that is good. Importantly, though, they've also had an important impact. We use 2 metrics here to talk about this. The first metric is about the hectares of deforestation that we prevent each month. We produce around about 600 metric tons each month of fuel from agricultural waste. That is 600 fewer tons of wood, which can be made into wood charcoal or just firewood, which means we are helping to stop 60 to 120 hectares of deforestation each month. In addition to which, we save around about 1,500 metric tons less of CO2 being emitted into the atmosphere every month. The purpose of this, clearly, is to talk about we have knowledge of this market. We've been doing this for a while. We've been doing this in Burundi. So we understand this. But principally here as well, and particularly for this in the clean energy market as a whole, this is about how do we finance projects here, not just in what we've been doing, but also how do we finance projects in areas such as solar, hydro, piezoelectric, all these different areas. And this is really this is really key to the whole thing, because without finance, as we all know, there is nothing. We can do nothing without finance. And what I would like to do in the next couple of slides is talk you through some ideas that we have about this. There are a number of hurdles that exist in accessing climate finance, as everybody in this room will know, and this is not going to be unique to Burundi. There's a lack of dedicated frameworks and policies in place. Yes, people are becoming more and more aware of the need to have frameworks and policies in place by government to be able to enable access to climate finance. A very good friend and colleague of mine made a very good analogy. Everybody in Africa, as we know, is a farmer at heart. And the role of government is to plough the field to allow the private sector to sow and to reap that. Putting these policies in place to enable access to climate finance is ploughing that field. There are a lot of high costs associated with developing a project. We know that. Every project is high costs, particularly for those eminent small, micro, and medium-sized businesses that either want to start or transition into clean energy. The costs can be preclusive, as can the accreditation costs. Making sure that you are completing all the measures and tasks and forms to make sure you have that accreditation can be costly. There's also a limited amount of technical expertise here and human resources. There are some fantastic people here who can do the things that we need to do to measure, assess, and build. But if there aren't enough people to do this, that means those resources are strained. And if those resources are strained, that reduces the chance of accessing capital. There isn't enough expertise around for those investors to be able to trust what's going on and invest more in. So how do we surmount these hurdles? Well, there's a number of different ways we can do this. And from our perspective, these are just talking points. I wish I could see what that says on the screen, but it's a long way away, so excuse me a sec. Thank you very much. Collaboration on pilot projects. If there are a number of small or micro enterprises that want to do similar projects, if we can run early stage pilot programs together and assess the results of that together, that reduces the cost of doing multiple projects that will come out with similar results that are needed. Package them together. Similarly, I wonder if I could ask for your help again in what this is, because I can't see. Oh, results-based financing. Results-based financing. If we can put in place steps to assess how successful projects are, stage by stage, then we can look at releasing funds stage by stage. Those investors can be sure that what is being achieved needs to be achieved, is being achieved, and where assistance needs to be brought in to refine or improve, so it can be, so that trust can be in place to release more funds. Right. Diaspora crowdfunding. This is a little pet project of mine. I think this is important. There are a number of Burundians living overseas, as I'm sure you know. Many of you may have family overseas. Many of them may be interested in investing in projects in Burundi, in their local areas, in their local communities, if there are crowdfunding sites set up. Those projects that are successful can return their investment. That can be refunded, re-put back into new projects. It allows people here in the communities the chance to speak to their family, their friends who are overseas, and to invite them to participate in making Burundi an even stronger energy environment. And of course, there are also a series of policy changes that could be done. For example, to make projects more accessible, or at least easier to begin, set a certain financial threshold from the government, where accessing permits, getting licenses, are run online and made easier, perhaps something akin to ADB in the way that you can start a company online in Burundi, which is, by the way, a fantastic process. Yes, dedicated windows for small and micro enterprises. It would be a fantastic opportunity if the government could find times throughout the year where it could put aside small funds, to help small and micro enterprises develop their businesses. In January, for example, maybe the government or organizations can find $20,000, $10,000 that is specifically set aside for helping to train people to become solar engineers. We can take all kinds of different thoughts like this, but these specific windows ensure that small and micro enterprises have the chance to really focus and engage with government or providers to build capacity. Putting in place standardized measurement reporting is key as well. There are so many different types out there. If we can standardize this in some ways, we can reduce the costs that there are in businesses having to comply with different types. The cost of those can be huge. And the final part. I come back to capacity building, as I mentioned before. Capacity building in the ways that people can find accreditation, can become stronger and more knowledgeable about what they are doing, that will speed things along. I'll come to some last few points here, as I know I'm running towards the end of my time. We have an opportunity here to sprint to get Burundi to be clean energy sufficient. And we've looked here at 3 different ways of pursuing this. From a consumer perspective, how can we look at more pay-as-you-go opportunities for consumers to be able to access clean energy? The more that consumers are able to pay via pay-as-you-go, the easier it is for them to pay, the more consistent payments will be made to clean energy companies, which means there's more cash in the bank, which means the businesses work better. Partnerships with microfinance institutions, I mean, that's not far away from the pay-as-you-go. How do microfinance institutions want to engage with us, clean energy companies? Can we find environments where we can sit down together to find systems that will work? Too often we sit in separate rooms and throw ideas at each other. We need to make sure we sit together to do this. Then if we look from the finance side, I think I know what these are. Project preparation finance. For small and micro enterprises, can we find a way to make funds available so people can get to the get to the early pre-feasibility stages of doing a project? Can we find funds that are available for that? Bundling credit lines together from banks, it reduces the risk to banks if we can bundle credit lines from different banks together. It means if one credit line is exhausted, other credit lines can be available. Reducing the risk for lenders is a major step that needs to be taken. We all know that lenders are risk averse. In their very nature, they are risk averse. Bundling credit lines is one step towards making them more comfortable about lending. Then finally, 2 from the government. Knowledge exchange. Now, if Delphine was here, he would point out to you that he is on the board of the East Africa Business Council and the co-chair of the Sustainability Committee. He is passionate about making sure that experiences in different countries across the East African community can be shared. So we are not reinventing the wheel. If government and governmental organizations, Quangos, can work together to ensure that we can share best practices in clean energy, that reduces risk, and reducing risk reduces cost. The last thing is putting together a pipeline of investment-ready, bank-ready, bankable projects. I've worked in Africa for 25 years. I've seen a lot of projects, some amazing projects here in all sorts of different areas, not just clean energy, but more recently in clean energy. The big step we need to do is to get these projects to be investment ready. There are organizations here in Burundi and elsewhere who can assist people in getting investment ready, in making sure that you are presenting the right information that investors are looking for. Too often, projects are discarded by investors because it's not following the format that they expect or the information that they are expecting, despite the fact that that business might have the information, they just weren't aware they had to share it. By getting projects investment ready and putting a pipeline together, that helps investors to make decisions. And it also means we can share knowledge, which reduces costs. I hope that made sense. I think that is the end of the presentation from Kage. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm delighted to speak to anybody about this afterwards.
Merci pour la présentation, Dominique. Là, je vais appeler Madame Lucia, qui représente Biocar.
Amahoro. Je vais parler anglais parce que mon français n'est pas bon. Excusez-moi. I'm Lucia Brusegan and I'm from the International Biochar Initiative. And I'm here today and I'm grateful for having been invited to introduce a different angle, a different perspective to see how energy can be framed in a way that can offer multiple benefits. So, okay. Sorry. Okay, so let me give you an introduction of what we have been doing here in Burundi.
Just one second.
Oh, yes.
Désolé, je vais aussi inviter Thermi de Bambou de Verny ici. Je pense qu'elle elle fait partie des panélistes. Merci.
Thank you. So I'm here to introduce you to these new systems that have been tested and introduced, and a pilot introduced here thanks to two projects. One from the World Bank and another one from the European Union, which explore the nexus between food and energy with biochar. So we have been implementing a relatively new concept that integrates home energy use produced from waste and not from wood and not with charcoal, with crop production. What you can see in this picture is biochar. You see on the left side a farmer up in Gozi province that he has produced this biochar using the stove. And you can see that the biochar there is very similar to charcoal. This is something that you know what it is. And, we have two differences, two very important differences. So the first one, that stuff has been produced from agricultural residues. The second one is that stuff is not used to produce energy, but to improve soil fertility. So that's a big, big difference compared to charcoal. And you can see in the other picture, perhaps you don't see it very well, that farmers apply the biochar into their soil. So that's basically the concept behind. So let's offer a few backgrounds on biochar. Sorry, it's not moving. What's happening? So biochar improves soil fertility. That's a key aspect of my story. And crop productivity. This is clear, this is accepted, and this is important because that's the starting point of all these activities. And when biochar is used together with organic or inorganic fertilizer, it can improve the soil on average plus 48%. 48%, which is a lot, meaning that if you use a fertilizer, metadata studies says that inorganic fertilizers on average, on global studies I'm speaking about, they improve soil fertility by 26%, okay? And then you need to apply the fertilizer again and again each cropping season. When you use the biochar together, combined with the fertilizer, the improvement is much higher, and it turns out on average 48%. This is a recent publication and a metadata study analysis that have been published 2 years ago. So it's true, this is happening, and also biochar alone can make a difference in the soil. So there are several opportunities to use this biochar, which is produced with the stove or with other devices, as soil amendment. And here in Burundi, there are very interesting opportunities to recover nutrients and use those nutrients with the biochar from water and sanitation projects, because phosphorus and nitrogen can be recovered and used for improving soil productivity. But there is another interesting aspect about this technology. When we produce the biochar, what do we have in our hands? We do have carbon, okay? That carbon is fixed in the product, in the biochar, and it's not released back to the atmosphere. What can we do with that carbon? We can put the carbon into the soil, so we don't release it again, and that is a carbon pool, a carbon sink that stays there, and it is permanent. It stays there for centuries and millennia. It depends on the quality of biochar, but of course, and on the carbon content of that material, but it is basically, it works like that. So what we are doing in putting our biochar into the soil, we are sequestering carbon. And that's a very good news, because in this process, we can have two major impacts. The first one is for the country, for Burundi, for the government, which can, let's say, account for that process in the national determined contribution within the Paris Agreement. So we have been working on a paper, I have it here, it will be published next week, setting a global framework to calculate how far biochar can contribute to this calculation of NDCs. And it seems that Burundi can do a lot of that, because we calculated that it's around 18% of the potential use of waste biomass. This is something that can be further explored, but it's quite interesting. The second interesting aspect of this is that biochar applied to the soil can generate an additional income with carbon credit from removals. We can claim in the voluntary carbon markets a carbon credit out of that activity. So credits from removals are already available for those who apply the biochar into the soil. And there is the calculation, just think about that 1 ton of CO2 equivalent that is removed with biochar is valued between 100 to 200 euros in the VCM, in the voluntary carbon market, which can be something interesting, especially for smallholders that can integrate their income. So, biochar addresses several SDGs. Of course, we need to be sure that we have the biomass available, the waste biomass streams that are there. We need to take care about the technology to produce the biochar, and the biochar effect depends on different variables, so it's not working just straightforward. We need to frame it in the context that it is deployed. The good news is that, thank you to the projects that were supported that I mentioned before, we have built capacities in Burundi, and I will invite you to visit our stand outside. There will be my colleagues, Pierre and Jean-Marie, and they will explain to you everything about the technology, and they are Burundian. So, let me make a step forward. So, I'm here for energy, of course, to tell something about energy, but energy can be used also to produce co-benefits. So that's the device that we have been introducing in Burundi since 2018. It is called ELSA stove, and the ELSA stove is a TLAD cook stove concept that it is built around a microgasifier, okay? So it burns waste biomass, and it doesn't process wood, basically. And the emissions are equivalent to those of the natural gas because it burns a gas, okay? And it produces the biochar. And the other benefit is that this stove is produced locally, is produced here in Burundi. So we don't need to ship and to work on the logistic of the stuff because it is here, the production is here. If you see in the right slide, that's another important aspect. So you see the evolution of the stove design that has been used in Burundi, and thanks to the different projects, we were able to work to improve the design in a way that it is still possible to produce the stove here and to get a more efficient stove. So you see the picture among the stoves. The one on the right side, this is a new, the new stove. It is a prototype that we have we are testing now. It has a substantial improvement because it has a registry for primary air at the bottom. So that is very good to improve the efficiency of the stove. So let me say a little bit more on the concept of system. You see, now we are almost there. I mean, we start from the input size. We need to have a biomass, a waste biomass available. Here in Burundi, what we have been working with is palm oil kernels, which are a perfect waste to be used in the stove as they are. Corn cobs, stems, rice husks, coffee pulp, and there are many other opportunities that can be explored. Wood chips, and there are many other that are available in the landscape, scattered in the landscape, or aggregated at facilities. I'm thinking about rice husks and coffee pulp, and some cakes that can be available with the agro-industries. Of course, here you see the stove as processing and the stoves supply with energy and biochar, and the stove is a small-scale stuff that produces both energy and biochar. But try to figure out that if we don't use a stove, we use a bigger plant, a bigger unit, the process occurs anyway. So we can get energy for other purposes than cooking, of course, and biochar as well. And that biochar can go back to the soil, improve the soil, can be combined with nutrient recovery from other activities, and it can enhance the productivity. We get more food, and we also get more biomass that can be used in the system. So it is a circular model that is going around the stove or around a different option. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I will tell you the two aspects which are key to us to advance with this technology. The first one is the cost for production. You have seen the stove, despite it is produced here, but it's costly. The production costs are a little bit higher than the average stoves that the Burundians can find at the market, or the stoves that have been produced thanks to other projects. So that's why there is more metal inside that, and there's more labor to produce this stove. So it can be perceived as, okay, this stove is expensive, which is true. But on the other side, the stoves allow to save the fuel, because when someone uses this stove for cooking, it doesn't need to look for the wood or for the charcoal or to buy the charcoal. So they save the money in the fuel. So I think the initial investment is very well balanced in the medium-long run with this stove. So take-home messages. So the ELSA stove saves money and or wood used to purchase the fuel wood. And this is a kind of front-end benefit. And I forgot to mention the ELSA stove is quite an efficient stove, and the women value a lot the fact that they can cook faster with the stove. Of course, there is this stove staking, and sometimes they prefer to cook with the other traditional stoves because perhaps they like the food more smoky, which is fine, but that's the strategy. They don't move from one stove to another one. They just prefer to use different options. And the choice rely on what they have available, what they want to cook, if they have the money to buy the fuel, and all this kind of stuff. So the ELSA stove saves wood and or the money.